some more people kind of streaming in over time. Hey Zepti, hey Olivia, hey Bear, hey Rex.
Hey everyone.
Hey. So when we're starting, like the first few of these sessions are going to be a little bit heavy on me talking way more than I would like in the beginning, but until we get this thing kind of like spun up, anyway, over the next couple of weeks that will lessen. But for right now, just kind of bear with me. But what I would like to do is turn over. I'd like to just kind of like mimic what we do with the community calls, which I think is really cool. It's like doing the mission, vision, and values. So we don't have all that stuff yet, but we do have like a placeholder kind of like description. And so what I'd like to do is just kind of like have people just take turns reading this, right? You know, like like every week, everybody kind of like takes a turn. So, hey, Gene, can you read that from the screen there?
Yes, sir, I can. The Sampo?
Yeah. The one where it says, yeah, the Sampo is the finish, that one?
Yes, sir. Sampo is the finished mythic horn of plenty. It symbolizes this working group's purpose, mission-driven, community-owned, and governed capital to advance the field of token engineering. We focus on financial management, income generation, and the economic development that builds demand for the TDC token.
Thank you, sir. So we're going to keep working on this statement, but it's good. I mean, it's good enough for right now. I mean, I think it kind of, it's like evocative and it does describe what we're doing, but we'll get to this in a bit, but like we're going to work on the manifesto over the next couple of weeks. And in that, we'll also like hone this mission and get it pretty tight. Yeah, we'll just leave that there for right now. So the check-in, here's the prompt that I would like to get your take on is like, name one financial term that you probably could understand better than you do. And I can, well, no, I'm gonna, so the idea isn't to like to show off like your financial acumen. It's to be, this is like honest, this is more about honesty and openness. So I'm going to turn it over to Enti.
Oh, wow, why me? I'm not sure. I don't know if I have like one particular term, but I would say that I'm not really that familiar with financial terminology. Overall, really, the most I know is probably what you learn, sort of, what you can expect to learn from joining Web3 or crypto, whatever. Like I don't know. That's probably just it. Just that. And one reason why I'm really excited about this group, just sort of to learn and know more on how do communities can or how do whoever can sort of manage finances better and get a better understanding. And with that, I'll pass it on to CryptoSac.
All right. Hey, sorry. I didn't hear the question. I was just figuring out how to turn down the music.
Oh yeah. And actually, I learned today that you can turn it down on a mobile device, on a phone too. So that's possible.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I didn't know the music was a user too. Music or Zoom call.
Music is a user. So the question is, what's like a financial term that you feel like, wow, I actually probably could understand that a lot better than what I actually do understand.
A financial term that I can understand better? Yeah. Probably maybe derivatives and paper shares and more types of derivatives. Squeefs. I want to understand squeefs more.
Okay, cool. Do you want to pass it on to somebody else?
Yeah, sure, I pass it to Griff.
I'd love to understand ETFs better. I feel like there's some analogies to bonding curves that I've heard before, and I wish I knew the magic behind ETFs. That's like on my to-do list to research, honestly. I'll throw it over to Livia.
I feel like I could understand more about so many of them, but maybe compound. And I'll pass to Mert.
We can't hear you. You're muted. Hey, Mert. You're still muted. Hey, Mert. Can you hear me? Okay. Mert, we're going to come back to you in a sec. You seem like you're maybe lagging there too. So I'm going to hand it over to Zepti for right now, and then we'll come back to you later, Mert.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I like similar to Grief, like understand how traditional finances work. Like even if like futures, like how futures affect Bitcoin, and if we could use futures for TC, like I don't feel like too many tokens are doing it. I don't know how that would affect. Like, would institutional people put money into TC? It'd be cool to try, right? Like, and I don't know, like use like actually like the tools that the powerful people in the world is using to actually fund public goods. I think that'd be very good, and I could learn much more about that. I'll pass it to Mert.
Okay, it looks like we're still having issues there. So, Bear, do you want to go?
Sure. So I think I'm kind of on the same boat. I'd like to know a bit more about MEV. I cannot get my head around that one. Yeah, who's missing?
Gene, do you want to go? And actually, Rex, can you say, I didn't catch what you said.
Said
Oh,
MEV.
I don't like. I think someone else mentioned Squeeze, and I think that's quite an interesting one to get your head more around. And I had an idea about how that one worked, but it's not the way it's done. And then minor extracted value, I also don't understand the particularities of that one. So those are kind of two that I'm interested in. Yeah. So was it Gene?
Thanks, Rex. Yeah, I guess from a finance perspective, I would want to learn more about options and be an effective options trader, similar to the future commodities aspect. And in terms of economics, maybe Keynesianism. I know who Maynard Keynes was, John Maynard Keynes was, but I really don't know much about his economic outlook or neo Keynesianism for that matter. So yeah, and pass it back to Mert. See if he
Mert, can you Is your audio fixed? Still can't hear you. You're
I want to add one thing that just came to my mind. I think that'd be cool also. Like a lot of protocols like have like two types of token, one that's stable and then another that's volatile. And I would like actually to know more why they do that and how could that benefit any protocol.
okay. All right, I'm gonna go. Mine's pretty simple. Shorts and puts. Like I feel like I should understand that way better, but I just don't. So that's my mission. And it feels like now is maybe kind of an interesting time thinking about that. All right. So thank you. Thanks everybody. So the next thing that I want to do is just talk very briefly about clarity. As we're going through this, NT and I are actually doing this cohort 0 thing with the clarity team. I think it's starting next week or week after. There's like 8 different DAOs that they're onboarding with some training. It'll be like an hour and a half on Mondays. And so we'll get to kind of compare notes with other DAOs with what they're doing, and then we'll get some training as we're going along. And then try to feed that back into what we're doing here. I just wanted to show a couple things while we're here, just so that you can see what's possible with this. So, like this, the projects view allows you to like dive in. It's a lot like ZenHub. And you can dive in, and so like you can see like here, you can put links in. You can have subtasks on a project. So this is like create Sampo mission statement. If you click on that, it shows you this. There's assignee, people you can assign to, due dates, priority. It's very similar to ZenHub in that sense, and it's very easy to go back. So like here. All of this stuff underneath all of the wiki is actually a graph network, like a knowledge graph with two-way links. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty powerful. You can do things like, if I want, I can grab anything and like turn it into a project or a task. I'm not going to do it right now, but it's just like one click and you turn anything in a wiki into a task. You can assign it. So as we're going through, it makes a pretty powerful way for like just like getting shit done. Like you're going through, you see something that needs done, you just click, and then boom, you can assign it to somebody with a due date and things like that. So still lots that we don't know yet, but and we are just really testing this. This is not for TEC wide, but this is kind of like one of the places where we want to test this tool a lot. And see whether it works or not. I'm going to pause there for a second. Any questions or thoughts on this?
How do we get added to it so we can add cards and stuff? Maybe I'm skipping to the next step, but that's my. I was playing with it and I couldn't actually edit it.
Okay. Can you? You're probably the person on there. Did you put your name in there, Griff?
No, I'm just an address.
Okay. If you can put your name on it, if everybody could just put their name, then we'll know who's who. And then there's all this stuff that NT and I need to work through in terms of permissions and stuff. It's got pretty sophisticated permissions, which is great, but we're still figuring this out. But I'll actually, let me just do that right now. I'll show you. So like members, this is probably you, Griff, right here, I'm guessing. And I probably shouldn't.
It's 839, and I think I just tried to add my name, so hopefully.
Okay.
The one on the top is me. Like, can you?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if everybody can just go in, like go in here, you'll see like my settings, and then just put a display name in. That'll help us with just knowing who's who. And it's especially important when we're doing commenting and things like that. And like I say, we'll there's still a lot of stuff that we've got to figure out on this, and NT and I are on it, and we're going to be trying to organize ourselves a little bit better. So apologies for that, but it's a very cool tool. You can do token gating. You can do a lot of the D-work stuff in this, so you can do bounties, token bounties, and all kinds of stuff tagged to projects. So more on this later, but I just wanted to kind of like slowly, inch by inch, we're going to kind of learn this as we're going. Okay, Sampo Analysts. Today, we had our first call, which was cool. It was NT, Gene, Bear 100, Mert, Manu, Rex, and Anak. And, we've got a bunch of stuff that we're going to be doing in Sampo, but this was one, like there was a lot of energy that was already going in the Discord channel. And so people were just like starting to go, and I didn't want to hold it up. So we just basically spun this one up. There's a thread now in Discord for the Sampo Analysts. And the idea here is we want to like get clarity on what the actual reality is right now. And so we're going to be working closely with Zepti and the rest of the transparency crew, kind of like basically seeing transparency as like the raw data, like the folks who are like making sure that everything, like the data is there. And then what my hope is that with this crew, we're basically kind of doing more analysis work on that data. But there may be some areas too that where we will be like trying to find new sources of data. So one of the things that came up in today's call was like, what's this state of like, each of the working groups, not each of them, but a number of the working groups actually have multi-sig accounts that, where they have balances in those, and we want to know where those balances are, like how much of it's been spent. So that's like kind of the next wave.
Actually,
yeah.
Do you know analytics? Like we make a dashboard and you have all the multi-sigs in there, and you can just put the name like transparency and see, okay, transparency are like a bank account, like they got 16K from the commons, and then you see like minus 700, minus 500, 2K, whatever, like, and this is salaries. And then you can also, like, if you want to see the detail, what every number of those are, you have to go to the audit, because like there's no way like you can pull this data from Blow Scout. But yeah, it's like the multi-sigs are already being tracked.
Okay, we're going to follow up with you on this over this next week as we start to kind of dig into this. Is that okay, Zepti? Because I think like figuring this out is going to be pretty important.
Yeah, sure. And if you think it's worth it, I could share my screen right now and show it to you, and then you see if that's what you need, or maybe you also need something different that we could also, we can also be flexible and edit the data how we are showing it. And if you think like the data should be shown in different ways, it's also worth saying like, and we could, actually edit the Dion dashboard if needed.
Okay, let's not do it right now, but in the next analyst call, let's dive into that, and maybe even before that, you could show it to some of us on that, and then we can, and then basically start to build some process around that. That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Just taking notes. We will follow before next analyst call. Okay. I think the other thing I just wanted to note here is so we're going to be kind of mimicking. We're calling this a work team. And so like there's the working group and then the work team, and we're going to basically treat this like a fractal. So it's like, how like the working groups are in some ways kind of fractals of the overall community. Well, we're going to treat this working team as like this work team, just like the working group. We'll have a manifesto. We'll kind of do kind of similar things. to get it spun up and running in ways that align with their overall vision of the working group, but then also the community. So, and then the other thing is that I just wanted to echo something that actually, Olivia, you said last week, and I just want to echo. I want to echo this, which is that it's like fear is not helpful, right? So, like, I think a number of us are concerned about what's happening with the numbers right now, like, you know, where we are, and how quickly we're spending down. But you know, like, this stuff is a lot of psychological components to money, right? And so, like, if there's an atmosphere of fear and scarcity, then that's like a self-perpetuating thing. So, like, the reason that we wanted to spin up the Analysts as quickly as possible and get that work going is like, let's not talk about this stuff or speculate about like what we may be afraid is happening or whatever. Let's actually get the numbers and then know where we actually are, and then, you know, like, not just not let fear be the thing. You know, like, we'll transform that into like good strategy and execution and like working with each other. I don't know. Does that make sense to folks, what I'm saying here? And Livia, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I took your words to heart last week.
Yeah, I think you said it well.
Okay. All right. So the next thing is Sampo Manifesto. So that's like one of the things all working groups need. That's kind of the next project we're going to spin up. And Livia, if I can get you to kind of help me with some of that, that would be great, because I think there's some things that we can do on that front. And I've got a few ideas that have to do with like governance and just kind of thinking about how we really align this, because this working group is very important. It's like very sensitive, because it's so closely aligned with money. So I want to talk to you about some ideas for like how we get good governance over this working group in particular. Would you be willing to help me with that?
Yeah, for sure. Let's have a call this week.
Cool, thank you. And then let me open it up and see if there are other folks who are interested in participating in the manifesto work.
Yeah, I'd like to help draft it, but I would want to hear all the different opinions, because mine is definitely not the only.
Okay, cool. That's great. Thank you both. So I think we have a core that we can, that's going to be enough to get us going. Okay, cool. Thanks. So the other thing that I wanted to do today is I put together some thoughts on kind of like a strategic framing for like how we think about our resources going forward. And so I've got this in a document, but what I thought I would do today is just like take maybe 10 max 15 minutes to just run you through some of the thinking on this at a super high level. And then we can open it up to just some comments and, you know, thoughts, questions. And then like probably tomorrow, I can send a link to the actual document where people can digest it a little bit more and put some thought into comments and things like that. But I would be interested in just kind of like top of mind thoughts today. So I'm going to switch screens here. Okay. So you all can see that, right? So I'm going to just dive in, and I'll try to cap this, like I said, to like 10 or 15 minutes. So the thing that I've been thinking a lot about is like, how do we? This is such a big challenge or problem that we're trying to go after right now, and I've been thinking about the TC in terms of like a microeconomy. Like it's not just an organization. This actually is its own economy. And so I've been thinking about it like from an economic development lens. And so from that lens, like in a way, you kind of start with economic security. It's like, how do we make sure that this thing, doesn't go under? And like, how do we make sure that it has like stable foundations? And then from there, it's like in this sense, it is kind of like a company, but also like economies are like this too. It's like once they get whirring, like things start humming together and there's momentum and stuff like that, then things really start, there's like synergy and stuff that starts to happen and things really start to sing. And so that's like the second stage is economic momentum. We start to build some momentum. And then out of that, we get abundance, because like the thing, and you see that with like, kind of in shitty situations. Well, I mean, they're really good in some ways, but like if you look at Google and Amazon, like those guys are swimming in abundance. They have like so much money pouring out of every pore of their entity, right? But they're using it in different ways than what we would want to use it, right? But they've kind of hit their stride where there's like all these network effects and there's all this like amazing stuff that's coming out of those entities. And so how would we do that? But have it be mission driven and community owned and governed, right? So in a way, like the image that I keep having in my mind is like this, like a kite. You know how when you're like, if anybody's tried to fly a kite, like that first 5 or 10 minutes sucks, right? Because like it's like trying to take off and then just keeps like hitting the ground and then you got to go get it and like get it to fly again. And then, but like once you get it above a certain height, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. You can make dives and you can do all this like really cool, expressive dance with a kite, right? But you can't do that at the low level. And I think that that's like a pretty good metaphor for where we are right now. Like the kinds of moves that we make in the short term have to be, more about like economic security, reducing risks, and then the money that we have, it's like really targeting how we build capacity. Like, how do we grow the economic momentum of this community, this DAO? And so, like, that's stage one is what I'm suggesting here. And then stage two is kind of like, all right, once that momentum starts to build, then we start to kind of, there's like actual value that is being generated, and then people want to come here, right? Because there's like all this value, this really great stuff that's coming out of this place, and then that value comes out of services. So like we haven't really started building the services yet. There's one service that we have, which is speculation. So like people can come in and they can speculate on our, they can use our ABC to like to get TEC, tokens. That's actually a service, and it's pretty cool, right? And so we're going to be coming up with another like new waves of services. What those are still TBD, but those services will create value, and then hopefully we can start to create some synergy between those services too, right? So the whole thing just starts to spin. And then at that point, that starts to move us into stage three, where once that value is really flowing, we've got abundance, and we can start sharing that abundance way more easily with the outside world. And so I'm not saying like don't share with the outside world in the beginning. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is, if we think about our beginning investments more as like the capacity building, almost like it's the way that we start to get this thing churning, right? To build the momentum. And then we can become a lot more aggressive about giving that money away. So that's that. I know that's a little bit different from the way we've been thinking, but I just am going to put that out there. So this is the first lens, which is the basically economic development lens. And then the second lens is like the capital lens, like what's the type of capital that we're trying to build? And so if you think of like capital in this commons, right? Or you think of like a commons just in general, like what is a commons? It's a resource that's stewarded by a community of people who agree on a set of protocols for like using that resource and building the commons itself and then governing it, right? So I got really curious about like, well, what is this resource that we actually have here? And I looked at Gregory Landau, who runs Regen Networks, and he had this really cool thing he wrote probably about 10, 12 years ago that was looking at 8 forms of capital, and it's really good. I'll put a link in the document. But as I really started thinking about it, there are like 4 things that really stand out for me anyways, and I'm curious, it'd be great when you guys look at the document, like if you see other types, right? But the one that jumps out to me as strongest with this community is its cultural capital. Like it's just huge. Like we just ooze culture. Like the cultural build has worked, right? And that is like such a powerful thing that we have. And then we also have financial capital, and like the thing that's so cool about the financial capital we have is that it didn't come with like this burden of like VC, right? Like there's no venture capital that owns us, right? So we have a lot of freedom, which is really powerful. And then there's social capital, right? It's like, so that's like relationships, and we have those. They're like, we have deep relationships right now, but now the next thing is like wider relationships, like how we grow that, how we bring more token engineers in and other types of folks, right? And that's what the work that Communitas is doing right now is like building the systems to be able to bring in those folks over time. And then finally, and this is the one I think is the most interesting, is expertise capital, which Gregory, in his, like the way that he described it is he kind of breaks this into 2 categories: intellectual capital and then experiential capital. And I'm not going to go into the details of that here, but in the document, it kind of separates that out because they're different. And so this next picture right here, it's trying to show these 4 types of capital. And the perspective here is intentional, right? The culture is first because that's kind of where our strength is. And then you've got the financial capital, which what's so powerful about that is that it's non-fungible. Like you can use that to invest in all the other types of capital, right? So that means we have to be really careful about that one if we want to use that financial capital to build the other categories, right? And so the other thing to just kind of think about is like, if you think about this pie chart as an actual 3D image, it's like a flywheel, right? You start this thing moving, and in the beginning it sucks, man, because it's like just so much work to like get this thing going, right? It's like we've got, we're already moving now, but like as you start spinning this thing up, it starts to build its own momentum, and then it just keeps going, right? And that's what we're trying to do right now at like a high level, is get this thing turning. And so it's like a series of bets on these different types of capital. And well, because we're running short of time, I'm gonna just put this mission up there just to remind people. I'm honing in on the economic layer of the mission. But the idea is, it's like funding projects that discover, develop, and proliferate the best practices for engineering safe tokenized economies while aligning our collective success with individual benefit of the token holders. Well, it's like best practices is kind of another way of talking about expertise, right? It's like the economic layer is like it's developing and proliferating that expertise, right? So here's another way of looking at that. Strategically, if you start with what we've got, which is really strong cultural capital, like we really are good at that. And we also have some financial capital that's unencumbered, right? We're not reliant on VC and people like that. So we can make our own choices about how we spend that. And so what this is suggesting is like, hey, let's really focus that on two things. One is building up the expertise of this community. And that's gonna look, there's gonna be a lot of different ways we're gonna do that. But also we're gonna want to expand our social capital, like which is bringing in the people who are gonna make this stuff really, have the momentum that we need, right? So over time, as we start to carefully invest this financial capital into these two types of expertise, some of this will look like the Token Engineering Academy, like embedding expertise in people, and some of it's going to look like embedding expertise in code, right? It's going to be services that we're going to build probably that will build value for this community. And those things, in the next phase of this document, I want to talk a little bit about how we build these kind of automated self-service platforms where we can serve lots of people with token engineering expertise, and create like this really good synergy between these things. And then ultimately that then flows back to the finance and to the culture, and we get the momentum flowing across all of these. So the last point is just kind of summarizing this, which is like, capacity building is a phrase that they use a lot in the nonprofit world, and I think it's really valuable for us to be thinking about things in that term, and with that term. And what it suggests is like, in the beginning, we need to be careful about and conserve our financial capital, like really use it with the greatest impact possible, and invest it strategically in social capital and expertise capital. And then use that to build some economic momentum. And then eventually that momentum will get us the kind of abundance that we can use to then fund all kinds of stuff. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and just make some space for folks to talk. And like I said, I will be getting you a document that kind of like outlines some of this stuff just in written form that will make it easier for you to, if you don't like responding on the fly on a call like this, then you can do it in the document. But for now, let's just open it up and see what people say.
This came up. This 8 forms of capital also came up in the comment stack Degen to Regen AMA, and I think that there's a lot to be said about this idea of being able to offer other forms of capital besides financial. It's like offering, it is an investment opportunity to buy TEC, right? But then you also get other things, right? Where that other coins can't offer. They can't offer education around token engineering. Like when you're researching them and you get into a DAO, and the DAO is about, like, I love Pizza DAO. Don't get me wrong. I love Pizza DAO. I think they're a really cool DAO. They're trying to make pizza into a public good, giving free pizza to everybody. Join Pizza DAO and you get some warm feelings about feeding people with pizza, but you don't learn token engineering. You don't get to network with really cool people. You don't have these other forms of capital being ticked off and accumulating. So I think it's really wise to bring that into the mix and turn degens into regens. I also think that we can hit all forms of raising money too. I would love to see us apply to grants. Like, it doesn't all have to be revenue and economic. It can just be the good old classic fundraising. And with I've been spending some of this time trying to make a TEC Giveth project. Because it's been on my to-do list. And once we're verified, when people donate to the TEC, they'll get 75% back in Give tokens, streamed to them over 5 years. But like, it's like when they donate to the TEC, it's like now they're also getting extra tokens on top of it. So I think there's a lot of opportunities like that out there too, like Gitcoin, and doing just classic old fundraising.
I think also the key to the utility of the TEC token is being able to map out these other types of wealth, like, and tie them to the token. So just like Griff said, like how would the TEC token would be tied to token engineering education? Like maybe there are streams that for people to arrive to TE education, there is a point where the token is involved. And I think some of these pathways that we could start mapping out. And also on social capital, like when thinking of different types of capital, I think some of them enhance value through quality and some of them through quantity. So financial capital is more important when there's quantity. Like if we have access of cash, we can do more things. But then social capital, maybe it's not so interesting for the community to like want to expend so much on social capital, but expend the quality of expertise within a certain number of, like, a threshold of social capacity. And same with culture, like improving the quality over quantity, and just understanding how, like, maybe if we expend social capital too much, that would actually be harmful for us instead of instead of helping us.
Great comments. I'm also taking notes here, so the pauses are that. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's the social capital thing is really interesting too, because there's, like, if you look at like people who study social capital and like social networks, like they talk about strong ties and weak ties, and like we have like super strong ties here. That's like one of the huge strengths, right? And then the weak ties are also very important for building synergy and building the kinds of things that are important for platforms. But the question is, like, yeah, Livia, I mean, I think it's right. It's like, would we ever want to have, like, like there's like you can get bad dynamics, right? When you have a whole bunch of people who don't really know each other, like Twitter, Facebook, that kind of stuff. So yeah, cautionary tale. Any other thoughts from other people?
Yeah, I concur with Griff on the traditional funding, particularly with writing grants. This is something that's so applicable to all different economies, and we can benefit a lot from sharing this knowledge, and they will, grant writing organizations or granting organizations, and particularly governments would benefit directly from this type of expertise, and so we would potentially possibly seek some partnerships with other entities that might lend more credibility to the process, and give us some unique experience with helping people in unique cultures
On the government side, I mean, this is a stretch, but like Max, who works with Common Stack and is Ukrainian, he worked with the Common Stack and then spent 2 years working with the Ukraine government, and then just came back to the Common Stack really like right before the war started. He might have connections. I don't know if they would be interested in working with the TEC in some fashion. They have a lot of crypto, that's for sure.
Yeah. Also, there are a lot of opportunities to work with like the nonprofit world too. Like, for instance, my sister happens to be working with a really cool organization called Tech Bridge Girls, and they basically focus on educating young girls who are interested in technology, right? And so I showed them the fundamentals course, and they were like, "Oh, this is so cool," right? So they have like a well-oiled fundraising, and you could imagine them like figuring out a way to like fund some of the work that the Token Engineering Academy is doing, right? Like tailor stuff for younger audiences. So yeah, lots of opportunities here. Any other thoughts from folks who haven't spoken yet? And also, like I said, there'll be an opportunity, like probably tomorrow, I'll get the document and you can comment on that there. And this is really more like high level framing, but I think it's important that we have kind of like a frame for how we're going to approach this and how we think about this over time. It will save us time over time if we agree on kind of the big picture. Okay, well, let's why don't we stop there, and then people can add comments in the doc, and then let's go to the last thing, which is like what we want to focus on in the next call. I have one thought, which is focusing on kind of the people side of things, like who's here, like finding out like what are all the skills that we have here, like what are the skills and interests of the people who actually have showed up, right? So kind of the duocracy. It's like, let's figure out what we have here, right? And then maybe use that also to focus on figuring out what's missing, right? So like, what are the skills that we think we probably will need if we're going to succeed with the mission of this working. So that's one thing I was thinking. And then related to this too is something that I was talking to Bear about, which is I really believe that it's important for people to be able to develop, like to have like personal and professional development in these working groups. And so if there are ways that we can do that for people, through working in this working group, that would be awesome. And just as like a simple example of this, like in the Sampo analyst meeting today, we were talking about like that we need in that group, we need better understanding of how the augmented bonding curve. So like Griff, we were gonna ask you or Mitch or somebody to come in and do an AMA, for the analysts to kind of like help people just really understand how the bonding curve works. So that's like an example of the kinds of training and opportunities to grow that I'm hoping we can embed more broadly. So the question here then is, does this seem like a useful thing for us to focus on next call? Or are there some other things that people feel like, actually, I'd rather actually get going on block X, Y, or Z?
I mean, it's critical to start reducing spending right away, but at the same time, it wouldn't hurt to start doing some things like writing some grants templates for exposure to whatever capital we can expose ourselves to going forward. And it's going to take a while to get any of that money in the door, even if we are approved for some. But great, start as soon as possible.
I think conserving financial capital will happen in many ways naturally, because it's like, if you look at how hard it has been to pass this CAD proposal, it's because there is, as money leaves, it gets harder and harder. I would say I would agree with Gene that I think we try to conserve financial capital as requests come in, and we just make that effort, and maybe we can review the requests for capital and be a little hard on them, as they come up. And that we should really focus on the generation of capital, and maybe put I would love to see what the best ideas are and start, prioritizing them and going after them.
And Griff, by that, do you mean on the fundraising front, or like revenue generation, or are you talking about both?
Well, I think we should there's this idea of going lunar and then solar, right? Staying open-minded at first and just saying free space to generate ideas. And I think the ideas can be, donation, they can be revenue, or they could be economic. Whether it's making the Discord token gated or some of the channels token gated, that's more of an economic one. Revenue, starting up some kind of investment DAO, that's more of a revenue structure, and donations or fundraising, just getting, making an advertising campaign or marketing campaign for the TC and filling out grants. I think all of those, we can do all of those things. We just need to prioritize which ones and where we figure out what resources we have, and then allocate them to the big wins with little effort. High impact, low effort.
Yeah. One of the other things I think is a place where we need some capacity, and I'm in 5 minutes I'm going to be talking with the Writers Guild, but I think really being able to explain the core value proposition here in some very compelling grants and just general marketing material, I think is going to be so important over the next few months. So that's going to be one of the things I'm going to talk to them about, is how what the general interest is in doing that, and then how maybe we can actually, because most of the stuff I'm doing for volunteer, but for this stuff we'll probably need to pay folks to do that kind of writing.
Yeah,
important.
And if we can team them up with EFRA, I've never seen an audit report look so beautiful. I mean, come on. It's crazy. That is beautiful design, and Zep and the transparency crew, you guys did so well working with the designer. I'm sure that we could put something really nice together with the writers group and a designer.
Talking about EFRA, the other day I sent a link on the Sampo working group about Yama.xyz. EFRA started contributing there. They are treasury management startup kind of thing. They have managed Aves and Uniswap and Gitcoin's treasury, and this is not probably for right now, but thought that would be maybe interesting to chat with any of them and see if there's anything worth working on with them in the future.
Okay, I missed that, so I'll have to look at it. Yeah. Okay, so sounds like there's some energy around getting going on actually launching some of these initiatives. I think that one of the things that would be really useful would be maybe just kind of like a little brainstorming. Like if we were to do just traditional grant making, like applying for grants in the short, like short term, who would be the likely sources that we would go to for just grants, not investments, but like grants.
There's this FTX sponsored future fund, which gives fat stacks of money out, and I think we would very much be a good candidate for it. I think also the Ethereum Foundation, we could consider going out with them and seeing if they'd be interested in funding us. And then there's crowdfunding. I think we have a really compelling offer with Giveth, and we have one of the few audiences that would understand it. So like with Giveth, it's like, if you're trying to raise money for helping orphans or something, like, oh, I get tokens in a stream. What are you talking about? But token engineering, people would be down.
Okay, cool. It sounds like we've got some short-term things that we can also be working on simultaneously. So this may be another thing that we spin up as just like another little work team that can start going. I'm basically seeing like, let's get a few streams going because we've got to work on a few things at the same time, simultaneously. Okay, it's we're almost at the very end, so let's cut it here. And thanks everybody for joining in today. And yeah, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Gideon, for leading a great call.
Thank you, Gideon.